There is nothing worse than untapped potentials. If you know that you're made for more, this is the place. I know that every successful person I've ever met has one thing in common. They do not let themselves fall victim to their circumstances. They figure out a way to rise above it. So join me on this journey where I help you to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business. If you're feeling stuck and you're needing some practical tools, some hope to get you to that better life, this is definitely a place for you. Hey everyone, welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I'm your host, Lachelle Weemy, and today we get a chance to talk to trauma therapist Helen Ferguson. You guys, this woman is someone that you are going to fall in love with just like I have. She is fantastic and has this passion about really helping people step into their core selves and not really relying on that old raggedy programming that we might have that's kind of getting in our way. Helen, I cannot wait for you to tell everybody about who you are, how you love to serve people, what lights you up these days. So kind of give us an insight into who you are.
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this immensely. As you said, I'm Helen Ferguson. I'm a specialist trauma therapist, and I specifically, but not exclusively, work with women. And so when I say not exclusively, there are other genders and I that I work with, but also occasionally I still work with children. But predominantly I work with women who have been silently carrying around the story of their past. So whether that's childhood trauma, whether that's CPTSD, whether that's sexual abuse. I mention those three because those are the three that I generally work in, and I'm an expert in. And so what I do is I kind of help them to shift out of that narrative that they've been holding on to discover and rediscover rather their true core self, which is this confident, vibrant, courageous, energetic, empowered, you give an adjective to it and it's their woman that they want to be, because the pain of the past often takes over, and that leads to shame and not being able to share really that's what they've been experiencing. And so that's what lights me up, actually. My mission, if you like, is helping women and who have been carrying that story, that have been working through, in the sense they've been working to try and get out of the story, or they've been trying to read their way out of it. They've been trying to to do that and finding, oh no, actually it's still here, it's still with me.
Yeah.
So I have a fantastic purpose in life where I get to help women understand that doesn't need to be their story. And
That's so beautiful. And I think that one of the things that you touched on that I feel compelled to just say is that oftentimes I think we find ourselves being triggered by events, right? And so it's like really obvious that it's still there. But I think sometimes we have traumas that have been, carried with us all of these years that we don't even recognize are still impacting us.
no,
And
exactly. Yeah.
it's really defined who we are, but in our subconscious it's preventing us from showing up as our true self or showing up as our courageous self. And so we might not even recognize that this stuff has kind of been baggage that we've been carrying around with ourselves this whole time. And then we wonder why we keep hitting these blocks that we can't quite get past where we want to go. And I love that there are people out there like you that allow us to, in sense, condense time. Because like you said, I think oftentimes we read books or we listen to podcasts and we try to heal ourselves, but oftentimes we don't even realize the things that are down there buried that are impacting our day to day. So it's hard for us to heal it if we don't know it's there. And it takes somebody like you to help us see what is possibly kind of sabotaging our
Yeah.
present and our future, right?
Exactly. And a lot of the women that choose to work with me, and they come to me, and it's a very courageous step, because often women will think that, and people who think therapy think, oh, I have to wait until I'm in crisis to have that therapy. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. No, therapy is a beautiful act of self-care. It's a
Yes.
very, very normal thing. But a lot of the women that come to me, their kind of first conversation with me
Mhm.
is around, well, I'm not sure where this is coming from, Helen, or I'm not sure, I remember something, Helen, but I don't know whether, was it trauma, do you think? There's those kind of things that are in their minds. So there's like, flashbacks or emotional experiences, memories that they say to me, well, was it really trauma? It wasn't really as bad as what other people might have experienced. But
Yes.
I always say to people, your own experience is your own. It's unique to you.
Right.
Never
Right.
compare yourself to what other people have experienced, because that's not yours. Yours
Right.
is your lived experience. And and so often there is the question about, well, are you going to take me back to the past, Helen? And I say, no, because we're here and now. So we have to understand you in the here and now and help you rediscover actually who you want to be. Because, what you're saying to me is that you've reached this point where you know that something's missing.
Mhm.
You've done all the things. You're mom, you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're a partner, a wife. But there's something missing. I and actually what's missing is you.
Yeah.
Um,
And that is so beautiful. And I think that oftentimes we can get stuck in our own shame cycle by feeling like whatever we've gone through doesn't compare to somebody else's, trauma. How would you describe trauma? Like what would we be able to take from your expertise to help us understand where we might be stuck and what we can consider as traumatic things that might be impacting us?
I think, it's the very first thing to say about trauma is that it's not the experience, the event that's happened to you. It's
Okay.
how your body, your mind, your body, your emotions
Mhm.
have reacted to that experience, and how it's then sat with you. So you talk about shame. Well, underneath shame is blame. So if there's an experience that you've had that's like sexual abuse, um, or childhood neglect, childhood trauma, adverse childhood experiences, often what that starts out as is the blame, self-blame. Well, if I'd have just been somebody different, it might not have happened to me.
Okay.
If I'd have let somebody know, it might not have continued. If I had just done this, if I had just done that. So it starts out with the blame, and then that kind of moves into the shame. It moves into the shame of it. Well, yeah, I must be a bad person. I must be this because it happened to me. And so what we often feel when we've experienced trauma is that shame that develops into very toxic shame. That shame of I must have been the problem, and therefore, if I'd have just been different, none of it would have happened. I often have women saying to me, well, the common denominator is me, Helen. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work in this scenario. So in terms of trauma, and how it feels for you, what you might be experiencing is that self-judgment, that self-criticism, self-blame, shame, um, and and the needs. There's lots of needs driven behaviors. So the need to, and these aren't symptoms, by the way, but they're things to kind of be aware of if you've experienced trauma. um, the need to be liked, the need to be perfect, the need to be the best that you can possibly be. And that's always a difficult one, because we all strive to be the best that we can be, but often it has that element to it, which is, if I'm not that, if I'm not the best that I can possibly be, then I must be. And it's then this kind of complete
Right.
opposite.
It's almost like that's where our worth is wrapped up in.
Exactly. And there's this real loss of connection with yourself.
Yeah. Hmm.
This real kind of, if you look in the mirror and you don't know who you see,
Yeah.
and you're not sure, that's a real indicator that there is something happening for you. This disconnect between, with yourself,
Right.
and being able to respond to yourself with love and dignity and respect and kindness, but really not understanding the woman that you see in the mirror. You don't
Hmm.
know who she is, how she got here.
Right.
And sometimes it feels as though, well, I don't actually know what I'm doing. It's that, you know, real fearful, anxiety driven responses. And the emotional overwhelm and imbalance. So you can have quite what would appear to be overreactions to situations, emotional overreactions to situations. But actually, in the context of your trauma, you are responding to the trauma, not to the specific situation. So there's some kind of key indicators to be mindful of and to be aware of. But if you are sitting in a place of shame, and you're sitting in a place of not feeling connected with yourself, a real sense of loss with yourself, and feeling disconnected with the world around you and your friendships and family, then then we would need to look at what's the driver to that. And often, it's not in all cases, but often, there is a traumatic experience that you've had, which has influenced that behavior and that
And I'm
emotional
just
reaction.
curious because I think that a lot of times people are afraid to
Mm.
seek out help because they're afraid of having to go back and relive those experiences. So I know this is, going to be hard to oversimplify, but give me an idea of how it is that you help someone recognize that there is a root cause to all of these things without having to take them back and having them relive that. It's really cool, just your perspective on this that I wanted to make sure that I tap into.
Well, I mean, it is the first question or one of the first
Yeah.
questions that people always ask me is, are you going to take me back? Are you
Yeah.
going to shift me, take me physically, emotionally, and
Yeah.
psychologically back
Yeah.
to that place? And I was always my response to that is no. I need to kind of understand what's happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to know what you know.
Yeah.
You know, um, but that's it, because you're not living in the past.
Yeah.
So I have a first session. So my therapy program is called the Heart of Healing Trauma, but in that I have a first 90-minute session with
Yeah.
women where they just tell me exactly how they're feeling in the best way that they can possibly tell me,
Yeah.
and we get curious.
Yeah.
We get curious about what at what time in life that might have originated. When did you start experiencing this? When did you start feeling in this way?
Yeah.
Um, are there any memories or things that you can connect to that emotion, to that feeling?
Mm.
And but it's okay. You only say what you want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to tell me this happened to me, Helen, in 1995, you know,
Right.
and this is what it felt like, and this, none of that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So what we do is that in that first session is we actually just gently, really, really explore what and get curious
Yeah.
with what's happening in the here and now,
Yeah.
and and has there, from their perspective, been anything that they can think of that would contribute to those
Yeah.
emotions and those things that are happening now? And invariably there's always a story.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and sometimes a very, very painful story, and sometimes women can't look at me when they're telling me that story. um, and I say to them, it's okay. You only go as far as you want to go. You don't have to tell me anything. And you know what? You don't have to look at me right now either. That's okay. I'm still here. I'm still in this space, and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so from there, I just let them know that it's in that space then with me where we're moving forward. We don't need to look anymore at the past because
Mhm.
we can't change it.
Right.
And so it is absolutely, I want to say the word pointless. It's probably not the right word, but it's pointless me taking them back
Mhm.
because, I can't take them back and make it change.
Right.
I've done regression work with children in the past when I've been working with children, and it wasn't something that sat comfortably with me. And I did some of that work in America, um, but it's not something that I do. And and actually, nobody's coming to me to say, Helen, he'll change what happened to me. They're coming to me and saying, Helen, this is how I'm feeling now. How can I feel differently? And that's where we go from.
And what areas do you find people are really stuck because of past trauma? Like, help me understand where people come to you and they're at that point where, like, I need this to change. Like, this way that I've been living is not okay with me anymore. Kind of give me an idea of some of the people that you've worked with, or even yourself, when you come to this point where you're like, okay, I need to change this. This is where I'm stuck, and help us to kind of relate to some of the people that you've helped.
If I think about some of the women that I've helped over the last year, for example, there is a common thread
Mhm.
in that, because I actually, predominantly work with women in the entrepreneurial and business space. So um, that's not to say, again, that's not exclusively because
Right. Yeah.
not all of my clients are that, but um, it's for a lot of women, it's they've reached the point that they are just about managing to do the next thing, and then that burns them out and crashes them out. Then they just about manage to get enough energy to do the next thing, and then that crashes them out and burns them out again. And they're living in this cycle of the just about managing, just about able to do the next job, just about able to take their daughter to school, just about able to to make it into work, to do the next shift, those kind of things. Um, so there's this real sense of every single task, and not always a task, but every single aspect of life becomes a hurdle to get over. And after they've got over that hurdle, there's a burnout, there's a crash, and then they somehow manage to get a fraction of energy to do the next thing. And there's this real recognition that they can't continue to live like that they've been stuck in the doing of life, but actually they're no longer being who they are, or they don't know how to be just themselves in life. So there's often the kind of real fear of being seen, being visible, so hiding away, not if they're in the online space, not putting themselves in the online space, um, only doing so marginally, then stepping back a bit, then going back in, stepping back a bit. But this real fear of being seen
Yes.
for the for not being perfect,
Yes.
for not being good enough.
Mhm.
What if some? I mean, I have to be mindful of some of my clients' words, but in the sense of, I can't quote, for example, but the idea that what if somebody, Helen, finds out
Mm.
that I'm not as good
Yeah.
as I say I am?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What if, Helen, somebody finds out that I'm a fraud?
Mhm.
What if somebody finds out, Helen, that I'm not as good a mum as I'm making out, because some days I just can't be there for my kids?
Mhm.
And so there's all sorts of there's those kind of common
Yeah.
themes, that the fear of visibility, the fear of being seen, the fear of being noticed,
Yeah.
the fear of having to get over the next hurdle,
Mhm.
and then how am I going to feel after that next hurdle, and
Right.
then finding out that they can't get over the next hurdle.
Yeah. It's
I
almost
can't
like,
do the next thing.
I can relate to most of the things that you've said at some point in my life, and so I just wanna give you guys all hope that there is a way out, but
There
I
is.
still find
Yeah.
myself bumping up against, like, that comfort zone, right? Where I get to this
Yeah.
point where I know that on the other side of that is where I wanna be, and it's almost like
Mm.
I can get stuck into a fear of success.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Because what does success bring? Success brings visibility. Success
Right.
brings people noticing.
Yes.
Success means, oh my God, I've got to sustain this.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
can I sustain this?
Right.
So there's all those fears
Yes.
that are trauma driven,
Yes.
and and the kind of, I should have done it this way. So once you have done something successful, then the mindset sets in of,
Yes.
oh, well, maybe I should have done it that way.
Mhm.
Maybe I should have done it a different way. Maybe I should, or maybe I shouldn't have done that. you
Yeah.
know. So there's all those kind of anxieties that are driven by fear,
Yeah.
driven by self-criticism, self-judgment, and shame,
Yeah.
and lack of self-belief as well,
Mhm.
that drive. And that's why it's kind of running us ragged in raggedy systems,
Yeah.
because it's a raggedy system that's been defined by somebody else, by
Right.
the experiences that you've had. And actually, once you start to understand that, and start to break yourself free of it, I'm a very moving person, so I realize I'm
Yeah.
moving my arms around and stuff. um, but once you start to kind of nudge those walls and press them out more, you start to be able to kind of actually define your own system of working, your own patterns, your own pattern of being.
Mhm.
And that doesn't have to be the pattern that is everybody else's. It's
Right.
your own.
Right.
And I remember even at myself, I experienced 3 abusive relationships, one after the other, and from my late teens into my early 20s. And I remember the last one. They were varying degrees of and varying kinds of abuse, but the final one was much more physical as well. And I remember I was finishing my first degree, and I was turning up at university every day. I was trying to fit in. I was trying, and I was quite. I'm a very quiet person. I'm a very highly sensitive person, so I'm very quiet. I have a lovely, lovely group of friends, but that's it. I'm good. I don't do big groups. So how I managed university is beyond me. But I remember the going in every day and having to be somebody else. You know, I couldn't be the person that was being abused. I didn't know quite how to let anybody know
Right.
that. And I suppose people might have looked at me at that time and thought, oh gosh, she's angry, or she's aloof, she's not very friendly. It wasn't that. I just didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't trust anyone. I just about managed to trust myself at that point. But I was going into this space and where nobody knew me particularly well, and having to pretend to be somebody else, having to keep up this, oh, I'm the okay Helen. I'm the okay Helen. I'm the Helen that, oh, smiley Helen. Oh, we're just getting through Helen, and, oh, somebody's made a joke, laugh Helen, and having to be this different person, where actually I wanted to be able to say, this is what's happening for me. I don't know how to get out of it. And it's scaring me, you know,
Yeah.
and I didn't know. I'd kind of lost myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm a very self-assured, always have been. I remember my friend who I've known since I was 14, she said, even at 14, Helen, you were the most self-assured person I've ever come across. But those experiences kind of made me shrink. So I knew I
Yes.
was still in there.
Yeah.
And this is what's important for people to know. You're still in there.
Mhm.
This
Yeah.
this this person, this self-assured, this courageous, calm, confident,
Yeah.
whatever the I am is that you want to be, she's
Yes.
in there.
Yes.
She's just been stifled by these
Mhm.
experiences and these systems whereby, sometimes you don't feel safe enough to say,
Mhm.
this is what's happening for me.
Yeah.
And so you have to turn up and pretend. And that's what makes you feel like you're a fraud. That's what makes you feel like you're not good enough.
Right.
That people are going to find out that you're not good enough,
Right.
And I just remember the day that I qualified. So my original degree was as a psychiatric nurse, and I remember the day that I completed that and I graduated, and and I was walking back from the university to my home where he was still living, and I just remember saying to myself, no more. I've got to live my life for me now and as me, because this person that has been for the last 3 years having to somehow getting through a university degree and getting through that and having to be somebody else in that space, and then almost being judged for that too, because that's the other thing that happens. People are judging you.
Right.
um, and I just remember walking home and going, no more. And it was like this, that I can't, it was like just a light bulb revelationary moment.
Yeah.
And I got in contact with a friend who helped me get him out of the house, and I went and had a cup of coffee with my dad, and had a chat with him about everything. And it was like, right, okay, I've been through that.
Yeah.
That's not great. But I'm here, and it's now time for me to live my life.
And
And
so what would be some of the things that you would love for our listeners to start to think about or start to practice today that's going to help them move from, that space that you were that day or the stuckness that you've described with your clients to this confident, self-assured, courageous person that we all want to be? What are some of the tools that you have people do or that you've used yourself that have gotten, all of us from where we were to where we are or where we could be?
the first one, and it's almost the ultimate one. It's not on its in isolation.
Yeah.
Is is that you know because it underpins healing and recovery,
Mm,
is the that you have to start being kind to yourself.
yeah.
You know, you have to try.
Mhm.
And I know how hard it is, because I've had women get very angry with me in sessions when I'm doing a lot of self-compassion work with them and compassionate inquiry and exploration. They get really angry with me. Why are you making me be kind to myself, Helen? No, I'm not making you. I'm inviting you to be kind to yourself.
Right.
Um, and actually, because self-kindness and self-compassion are the you are wired for it. You are intrinsically wired for it in your body and your mind.
Yeah.
And so what happens with trauma and what happens with those experiences that have led to that kind of feeling like you can't be kind to yourself
Mhm.
is it numbs that out. It numbs the self-compassion out. It numbs the self-kindness out. And actually, what we need to, one of the first things to start doing is to really begin to be kind to yourself. Acknowledge that the statements that you say about yourself and to yourself are not coming from you. They're coming from the experience that you've had. They're coming from the person that has has instigated that experience, that has been the perpetrator of those experiences. That um, the voice that's yours is not one of criticism and unkindness and self-judgment. The voice that's yours that needs to be heard is one of compassion and kindness and dignity and respect. And that's the very first thing that I start to
Okay.
help
Yeah.
women connect with,
I love that.
as well as understanding their emotions. So
Right.
understanding that, the emotions that you're having are all completely valid,
Hmm.
every single one of them. I don't say that emotions are negative or positive or bad
Right.
or good. I say that they are all emotions, and
Hmm.
they are signposting you. They're a compass to what you need.
Yes.
When you start listening to that need with compassion and
Hmm.
kindness,
Right.
you start to heal.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. And curiosity, right? Without the judgment.
Yeah,
And
without the
stuff.
judgment.
Yeah.
I talk about acceptance, curiosity, empathy, and remember your playfulness. There's an inner
Mhm.
child that isn't wounded. So there's
Yes.
an inner child. Go and jump in puddles. Believe me, I'm a puddle jumper. It's fantastic. Um,
My coach actually has encouraged us to have marshmallow fights with our families.
yeah.
She's like, buy a bag of marshmallows, and as soon as everybody comes in the door, just start chucking them at them, and they'll pick up really fast. And before you know it, you'll be having this really fun marshmallow fight. And I think that it's important for us to take our lives a little less seriously from time to time, and to allow
Yeah.
that playfulness to come out for sure. Anything else that you haven't had a chance to mention as far as things that we can do for ourselves to kind of move us forward?
I think, I think, connecting with those people around you that are meaningful. Look at your inner circle.
Mm,
Think of yourselves as a planet with a gravitational pull. You know, there are
yes,
people that are in that initial gravitational pull
right.
they are who you feel connected to. They
Mhm.
are the people with the same values as you. They are the people that will show up for you in ways that you would never imagine if you just let them know that you need it.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes, I'm just gonna bring this up because I feel like when I talk to my clients or people that I care about, and even, past experience of my own, when we are in a traumatic space or we're living with the effects of a past trauma, I think
Mhm.
sometimes those insecurities can bubble up, and we're afraid to, I'm going to use the word prune, because that's something that somebody that I'm near and dear to my heart right now is going through, is having to prune some relationships. But it's also, when you're coming from that woundedness, it's really, really hard to prune people because of this underlying fear of being alone or being
Yes.
rejected. So it's like, oh my gosh, if I prune these people from my life because they're no longer healthy for me, what if I'm alone? And so then they decide to keep these people around because it's better than being alone. So what would you tell somebody that is kind of stuck in that space?
Remember that the being alone is actually giving yourself more value than you're giving to other people that are devaluing who you are. So being alone with your own value for yourself is far better than being in a group of people that are providing you no value at all.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I'm just taking that to heart and really, asking everybody that's listening, like, once you become to the space of valuing yourself enough that you're okay with being alone, the right people will start to show up in your life.
The right people will gravitate. Again, think of yourself as a gravitational pull. The right
Yeah,
people will
yeah,
then gravitate to you. I can count on one hand who my friends are.
yeah,
And I have pruned people out of my life,
yeah,
and people who were very close to me,
yeah.
but I have pruned them out of my life, and because I decided that actually I needed to give myself more value.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what I say to every client. And I have a membership as well, and where the women in there, we talk about value, we talk about our self value,
Mhm.
and having to make sure that you connect with the value that you give yourself. And when you prune, what that allows for is the right people to have space.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I could talk to you all day, Helen. Like, you have such a gentle spirit about you. And it's obvious that you care very deeply about the people that you serve and anybody that's listening out there, to really help them get unstuck and to help them to be
Absolutely.
able to love themselves enough to move forward into the person that they have been created to be, not the
Mhm.
person that the past has created. Um,
Exactly.
in a non-healthy way, right? And so I just love that. Anything that you want to add to this conversation that we haven't already touched on, because I really want to make sure that you have the floor to all of us listening.
I could talk about this all. I could talk about this all day and every day. And I do have other interests in life, but I'm very passionate about, I'm very passionate about this. And, I just want women to, and men and anybody actually of any gender, of any um, ethnicity, of any culture, to know that your voice actually matters. And I know it's really hard to be heard, and and it feels really hard to be heard when you've experienced anything traumatic, but your voice really matters, and it's led from your heart, so allow it its voice, and the right people will hear it. The right
Gosh.
people will hear
I have goosebumps. And that's so, I mean, for real, like the right people will hear it. And one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to know is that you have this amazing free download available. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I would love to, because it is one of the, it's a baby of mine, okay.
Yeah.
um because it's actually taken me a few months to create it, because I wanted to get it absolutely right for people.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and people kept on saying to me, oh, it should be a paid product and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, no, because there's a lot of people out there that don't know where to start
Mm.
in healing, and in healing and recovery, and and say to me, well, where, women say to me, well, where do I start, Helen? you know because, and it can feel really hard to know where to start. So what I've done is I've created a free 7 day experience, a free 7 day downloadable experience, which you then keep for life, which is helping you unlock the power that's within you for your trauma healing and recovery. And that's connecting with your self-compassion. So over 7 days, you get me in your in your pocket, um, and there's and you get lots of information from me. You get a beautiful guided meditation every day. So that's, setting the intention for self-compassion, bringing in self-forgiveness, self-kindness, um, self-compassionate imagery, thinking with compassion, and then living with compassion, um, alongside some beautiful affirmations as well that connect with the beliefs that you have from that meditation. um, and it's just in this wonderful experience of just having me in your ear every day, helping to guide you on that initial journey, so that you're not feeling like, where do I start, or do it, the self-help book on the shelf isn't I don't know what to do with it, I don't know what to do with that
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
And so it's a truly, um, it's truly a kind of therapeutic experience of connecting with your compassion, allowing yourself to be who you are, and bringing in all the aspects that you need in order to begin your healing and recovery journey.
I love that so much. You guys are going to have access to that and all of Helen's amazingness in the show notes so that it's easy for you to grab. Get that download, get started. You'll have all the ways to reach out to Helen if you choose to work with her or to follow her journey. And so I want to make sure that you guys all know how to get that. If you haven't already, make sure that you hit subscribe. And we love it when you leave reviews so that Helen can know exactly what it was about this episode that really spoke to your heart and really got you unstuck. I also want to make sure that you guys always know that you have the invitation to take a screenshot, share us in your stories, tag us. It's so much fun to interact with you in that way. And make sure that you're sharing this episode out with anybody who needs to hear it, especially because of that free download. I want to make sure that Helen's beautiful voice and her mission is spread out to anybody and everybody who could be blessed by it. And Helen, one of the things that I always do to wrap up a conversation is to ask the guests to think of a question that you would love the audience to ponder or think about that's going to move them forward. So, what kind of question would you have them think about?
Oh God, I'd probably have loads. um, I would ask them to get curious
Mhm.
with, who am I
Mhm.
without all the labels?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who am I? And if you can't really describe what that is,
Mhm.
actually then describe, well, who is it that I want to be?
Yeah.
And when you start to describe who you want to be, that's when you start to know that things can change.
I love that. When you say labels, it mean like
It's
mom,
like the, yeah,
nurse,
mom,
like,
you know, all the yeah, sorry, the labels. I was
yeah,
sorry, I realized there could have been all sorts of labels, but
yeah,
like, you know, like me, you know, I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a trauma therapist, I'm a
mhm,
this, I'm a that, I'm a
yep,
wife, I'm a dog mum, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter.
yeah,
Take away all of that,
yeah,
and I'm Helen, and I'm kind, and I'm courageous, and I'm adventurous, and I'm compassionate, and I'm a little bit quirky, a little bit weird at times, you know, um, and I love being with myself.
yeah.
Yeah. So you then get to describe this person. This is you,
Yes.
and
Oh my gosh.
if you don't feel that right now, then
Mhm,
describe how it is that you want to be.
mhm. Oh my goodness. I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing your heart. Thank you guys all for listening. And I hope that you guys got as much out of this episode as I did. Oh my gosh. Helen, thank you so much. And I will see you guys all here next Wednesday. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Untucked podcast. I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. And don't forget to check out the show notes if you want to get into my private club, the Better Club, to be able to learn better ways to be better, do better, and have better. So until next time, keep showing up. Let's get unstuck together. Have a great day.